Recording. So, hello everyone. Good evening and welcome to tonight's training session that is all about reframing recruitment. And it's a bit of a different session tonight because it's not going to be led by me. It's going to be led by the brilliant Jenny from Sikhona Coaching. And the reason I've asked Jenny to do this session is I think sometimes it's really easy to get stuck in a rut in terms of recruiting, the conversations you're having, the things that you feel like people might be thinking, feeling, whatever it might be about Usborne. So I thought it'd be really useful to have an outsider's perspective to try and help you to reframe how you view recruiting so that rather than it being something that you don't like doing, you put off doing, you do because you feel like you have to for your business, actually it's something that you feel like resonates with you in whatever way that might be. And it becomes something that actually you want to do because it's important to you for your own particular reasons, which might be very different to someone else's reasons for why they want to do it or for why it's important to them. So without further ado, I'm now going to hand over to Jenny.
Thanks so much, Lucy. It's so great to be here tonight. And thank you all for joining me and Lucy. For those of you that I've met, it's great to see you again. It was brilliant to meet so many of you in the last Leadership Academies last year. For those of you that haven't met, a quick, really short kind of bit about me. So I'm obviously Jenny. I'm a mum of two boys. I've just said to Lucy, one of them is still hanging around. So I've got earphones in, door closed. So fingers crossed it's a quiet one this evening. And I'm a business owner, just like yourselves. So stepping over the fear every day to try and build my business. My background is in education, but I now work mainly in leadership development and executive coaching. And as Lucy said, I've got the real privilege of joining you, like I have at Leadership Academy, as well. I mean, I was going to say as one outsider. I kind of hope I've made it slightly in now to the fold. I've been welcomed so warmly. It feels like I'm kind of part of Usborne, but my perspective is obviously not in the nuts and bolts of how you run an Usborne business. My part of this is very much around, our own thoughts and feelings and how we can frame those effectively to build a strategy for your business that works for you. So as Lucy said, and I'm sure in what's come out to you, this is thinking about how to make recruitment fit with you for where you are this moment in time, and also looking at, what is needed by those, potential new recruits that, as Lucy has just said. So let's sort of get going. Just to let you know, the session will run as normal. I've chatted to Lucy about how these normally go. So cameras, if you've got your cameras off, that's no problem. But, I would love people to engage in the chat as normal. And I'm not going to do anything sort of crazily different. Like we're not going to suddenly have breakout rooms or anything like that. So let's shift to the intentions for this evening. I'm sure you're all either in the throes of doing something this evening, with family or yourself, and maybe just take a moment just to kind of enter into where we are and think about what's brought us here tonight. Why have you joined us this evening? And the intention of, my company is called Sikhona, which is a Zulu greeting stating I'm here to be seen. So for those of you I've met before, we talk about this every time. It's turning up as our authentic selves tonight. That's all you need to be, whether that's in your pajamas, with a cup of tea, with a bar of chocolate like me. Coming here just where you are this moment in time without excuses or masks, and just kind of embrace the session together. And that will be met, I'm sure, by everybody in the room, but particularly myself, with the return greeting, I see you. So I see you as wholly capable and with no judgment. And when we talk about the chat, I was saying to Lucy before the call, I've been on millions of training sessions online. I'm often the overthinker that's sitting on the chat, typing things frantically, deleting them, overthinking what I've written. And then by the time I posted it, they've moved on. So I would just encourage you, if you can, leave that stuff that I carry with me at the door and share with us whatever you can, because the value is not just from me. The whole point of tonight is getting value from each other, within the room, whether you're brand new to Usborne, bringing that fresh perspective, new ideas, not a lot of unlearning to be done, just, bringing in the fresh stuff, or someone that's super experienced, that's been in Usborne for a long time, bringing that valuable support and insight for everything that you've done within Usborne. The value is there to be shared. So hopefully I can facilitate that in our session together. So where are we going? So it's a pretty jam-packed session, 2 parts of our session tonight. So whenever I work with either a one-to-one client or groups, the most important thing for me is to be able to move forwards with anything. We need to completely understand where we are today. So we're going to dig into what you currently think and feel about recruitment and the impact that it's currently having for you. And that might be great, or in a place that you think, yep, I definitely need to be moving forwards from here. So that's where we're going to begin. And then the second part of the session is about gaining a new perspective. And that's about recruiting itself. Also, we're going to really think about the mindset and perspective of possible new recruits and use all of that information to shape your approach to recruitment. So let's get going. So this is a model that is really useful, and one that I use sort of obviously within my coaching and leadership development, but actually within my own life. So power of our thoughts. This model is known as CBC, which is cognitive behavioral coaching. So just a bit, very similar to CBT, you might have heard of. And the essence of it is that we have thoughts, our thoughts evoke feelings, and our thoughts and feelings together impact our behavior. And the power of our thoughts, well, as we all know, what we think can often become a truth for us. And there's parts of our brain, I think, that actually can't always differentiate between a thought and a truth. So we have a thought, and the more of that thought we have, the more of a truth it becomes. And that can often become then a belief that evokes feelings and affects our behavior. So we're going to start tonight with, what do we think about recruitment? And this is where I'm going to ask you to start jumping into the chat in a second. We're going to start thinking about what thoughts are serving us well, which are not, and then start looking at how to reframe some of the thoughts we're having to find more helpful thoughts. Now, for some of you, and we'll find out in a second, recruitment might be a real strength. And this, I would encourage you to kind of embrace some of the session tonight, thinking about how you can use it for your teams, downlines. And for others of you, you're in a position where you think, no, actually, it's my thoughts. These are the ones that I need to reframe to maybe help me move forwards. So what I've done is put together, and this is from lots of conversations that I've had with leaders at Leadership Academy. I've kind of tried to distill what are some of the thoughts that I've heard about recruiting. And I would invite you, as I read out the 6 thoughts, just to consider which best describes my thoughts about recruiting. And then you're going to drop a number in the chat for me, just so we can start to get a feel of, if there's a trend in terms of a very common thought. So number 1, so when we're talking about recruitment, it's not my thing, so I don't try to recruit. Number 2, I do try to recruit, but I get easily disheartened when my new recruits don't do anything or they ghost me. Number 3, I have recruitment fatigue. It's a lot of work, often without much reward. Number 4, I used to find it easy. It has become harder recently. Number 5, recruitment is a strength, but it is time and labor intensive. I just tick the box and stop recruiting once I've hit the magic number. And what I mean by that is obviously the number of people that you need to recruit to hit either the incentive or for the next part of the model. And then number 6, I love recruiting. It's one of the strengths of my business. So thanks. I can see already Loads of numbers cropping up. Oh, brilliant. We've got a 6. So this is someone we can pull upon to say, okay, let's see what support. Lovely. Thanks, Vicky. Another 6. Great. A 1. It's got some 2s, 3s, and 4s. Brilliant. So I'd like you to think, as those are kind of dropping into the chat, you know, it's really helpful to connect with the thoughts that we are having. So I've thrown some out there just to get us started. But what I'd like you to do is think about what other thoughts you're having. So if I say to you, think about recruitment, what thoughts crop up for you? And if you've got a pen and paper, if you want to jot them down, but I'm just going to give you, throughout the session, I will be having some silence. It's just thinking time. I think it's important if I'm posing questions, I'm not jumping straight on. So just have a moment and think, what other thoughts crop up for me when I think about recruiting? And I've just been looking in the chat and we've got a whole range of numbers, which is wonderful, but quite a few 2s and 3s. And I think, that getting easily disheartened and the fatigue of recruitment can be tough. So what I really hope is by the end of this evening, you can find maybe a new bit of energy or a slightly different space to shift into. Okay, so that's just connecting a bit with our thoughts around recruitment. What we're now going to think about is our feelings. So I'm aware you may have seen, I think, it's sometimes called the blog tree. I was introduced this as a jelly baby tree, and I have a real sweet tooth. So I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go with jelly babies. So again, I'd love you to drop in the chat. Have a look at my tree and find a jelly baby that for you shows how you feel about recruitment. So we've done our thoughts. We're now thinking about how do we feel? So again, drop a number in for me so I can get a feel of where we are. 16, that falling off the tree. One gripping on, I think number 14 is like gripping on for dear life, and someone's trying to poke them as if to, come on, fall off. 15. Oh, I love that. Sitting on a swing. 11, a couple of 20s. Yeah, 20s interesting, isn't it? I mean, we all, look at these in different ways, but I feel that's pensive, looking up to what could be. Another gripping on. 18. Oh, I love an 18, Grace and Karen. I think, that one of us lifting the other one up. Perfect. 20, and thanks. 20 is watching others do it. Yeah, that's a good thought. Brilliant. So as you're finding that one that for you sums up how you feel, I'd encourage you now to have kind of a little explore around the tree. Which ones have you missed? Are there any others? And maybe like what's stopping you from like doing a handstand, number 1, or what's stopping you? I love the little the tiny number 7. I think just peeking out the side. What's stopping you from maybe feeling like one of the other ones? 10, I love that, Vicky. 10 is I love it and want to help others to share the opportunity and what it can do for them, who they recruit to. Yeah, that's a lovely thought, that togetherness. Oh, Keely, yeah, be number 1 before, would love to be there again, doing the handstand or cartwheels. Okay, so maybe that's a great shout as well. Which one would you love to be? Again, have a look around that tree. Which one would you love to think, do you know what? Actually, if I can reframe or shift my thinking around this could be possible. Okay, so the jelly babies gives us a really good kind of overall feel. Love to be a 3. Oh, we've got a few 3s. I'd love to be a 3. Relaxed at the top of their game. I'd love to be a 1. Would love to be a 1. It's good to be a 5. Looking for 5 now. Yeah, that real proud stance up the top there. 8. And that's a lovely thought. I'm happy with 18. Lifting, well, whether that's someone lifting you or you lifting someone else. What's 4 doing? Yeah, I'm not sure where 4's even come from. Who knows? Brilliant. Well, thank you all. It's great to get an idea of kind of roughly where you are and where you'd like to get to. I'm loving the 2. So now we're going to kind of really hone in on our feelings. So lots of you might have seen this before. This is the feelings wheel. And, you know, it's great to get a feel of where we are in terms of our feelings, but it's really vital for us to dig in that little bit deeper and identify exactly what feelings are cropping up for us. Because if we know the thoughts we're having and the exact feelings we're having, then we can start to understand why the behavior we have around recruitment is happening. So to give you a brief overview, if you've not seen the feelings wheel, the middle circle is full of big emotions, the ones that are in our emotional vocabulary sort of every day. So things like fear, happy, sad, angry. You've then got the middle section of the wheel. So these are flavors of the middle, or that inside section, I should say. So you've got the inside section. You've then got the middle section, which are flavors of these. And then the outside section are flavors of the middle section. So, for example, fear is a huge emotion. If I asked you what cropped up for you around recruitment and you said fear is quite a hard one to understand how to move forwards with. I know there's the classic, you know, feel the fear and do it anyway. But it's a real tough one. But if we can break the feeling of fear down to a very specific emotion, sometimes that can help us to help that feeling to become more transient. So, for example, if we broke fear down and on the outside ring, I choose something like inferior. So let me think. If I was joining Usborne, and I might be that one at the bottom looking up at everyone thinking, and I'm seeing posting in groups, oh, I've just recruited 3 new people, or yeah, I've got this new team. They're really engaged. They're doing brilliantly. And there I am, still trying to find my first one. For me, that feeling of inferior might crop up. I can't do what everyone else is doing. I'm not as good as them. Now, the difference between dealing with fear and inferior, for me, is pretty huge, because actually, if I know that it's that I feel inferior, I can start to understand what I need to do. So an emotion for me is just a signal. It's just some information. And if I feel inferior, I need to start thinking, right, what's going to help me to feel less inferior? Who can I draw upon? Who can help me? Whereas fear, it feels quite a big one to deal with. So I invite you now to have a look at the wheel, scan all the way around, because you might have 3, 4, 5 different emotions going on. Pop in the chat, which ones crop up for you that you think, yep, they're the ones that feel strong for me when I think about recruiting. Thank you, Diana. So fearful, anxious, overwhelmed. Overwhelmed would be, yeah, I was going to say that was going to be a common one, and here it comes again. Thanks, Emily. I love that. Curious, inquisitive. Oh, some great ones there. Excited, happy, proud, successful. Overwhelmed. So overwhelmed's cropping up a lot. Overwhelmed, anxious, inadequate, another inadequate, overwhelmed. Okay, now that's a great one. Eager. Eager mixed with tired and overwhelmed. It's a tricky combination. Thank you for sharing. I think as you start to kind of notice and acknowledge those feelings, I know when I've done this work myself, acknowledging the feelings, it can be challenging and uncomfortable to kind of sit with that for a minute and think, oh gosh, yes, this is how I'm really feeling about it. Now, we're not going to sit in this space for very long. We're just acknowledging where we are, as I said, this moment in time. So we look at then where we would like to get to. So yeah, some more. Oh, and optimistic. That's a great one. Weak, worthless, overwhelmed, annoyed, yeah, powerless. And I hope today that power, that's my aim, that you can take some power back. And I think, Nicola, that's probably quite likely, isn't it? You're flipping between things. Sometimes if something starts going well, we shift to some of those other emotions. And then sometimes it just takes something to knock us back a little bit again. So brilliant. Well, thank you all. So now we've thought about our thoughts. We've acknowledged some of the thoughts that are cropping up for us and where we are with recruitment. We've had to think about the feelings that we have and those emotions. And the third part of that cycle that comes down is behavior. So your behavior is around what are you doing and what are you not doing? And I think that's interesting. Alison's just said, I can change daily. So actually within the space of a day, you may be, at some point doing things and other points not doing things, depending on how your emotions or your thoughts progress. And sometimes it's being conscious about where are my thoughts, what's serving me well, what do I need to send on its way, and what feelings am I holding on to? And actually, if we can help those shift, it can then impact how we're behaving. So what I'd invite you to do now, if you've got some paper in front of you at home, if not, don't worry, just in your heads, I would ask you to kind of think about almost two columns. The things that you are doing. So that might be, I am posting every month on Facebook or social media. I am putting a QR code up on my book fair tables, for World Book Day, if people want to scan that to join. I am procrastinating. And then the second column, what are you not doing? So it might be, I am not approaching people that I know to tell them about the opportunity that is open to them. So just take a moment and just sit with what you are doing and what are you not doing. And I love that. We call it the Usborne roller coaster. Yeah. So actually, what are you doing when you're heading up that hill, and as you as you drop off the other side, maybe like what do you stop doing until you go back up again? Okay, so I know this is a bit whistle stop, and obviously this is being recorded, so feel free to come back to this, but we need to get to the good stuff. We need to get to the point where we're thinking about a reframe. I'd just like you to think about that whole cycle now. So you started with your thoughts, you then thought about your feelings, and then what you are and not doing. Thank you, Christina. I was going to say, feel free to drop anything else in the chat, just to help you kind of process some of that, that CBC process itself. And then we're going to move, in just a moment, we're going to move on to the next part so that we've got a good idea of where we are now. and then we can look at how to shift. Great, thank you for sharing. It's great to see what some people are doing. I am following up on interest. I'm not generating the interest. So that's a great reflection. And this is where this space sometimes, and allowing some of this space for yourself when you're working, on your business is really vital. Thanks, Emily. I'm loving supporting my team members to recruit, not doing any of my own. Thanks so much. I mean, it's late at night and we're doing some great reflection. And you know what I love? It's that responsibility, I'm hoping for a recruit, I'm replying to leads, but I'm not following up consistently. It's just being aware of some of those behaviors and maybe where that comes from in terms of the thoughts or feelings that we're having. Right, amazing. So we've kind of sat very much with where we are this moment in time. And I think, we've got a good grip on that. So now the next part of the session, as I said, is all about shifting our perspective. So I've provided a picture of the wood, and we're going to think about a couple of activities around how do we shift a perspective. So first of all, what is perspective? So I'm going to give you two perspectives that are contrasting, just imagining stepping into this picture. So the first perspective is, I step into this picture, I feel calm, I'm wandering along, seeing the sunlight drip through the trees, I can hear the birds sing, I can breathe for the first time this week, and I can finally be with my own thoughts. It's peaceful, and this is where I'm meant to be. Contrasting perspective of exactly the same place could be, I need to hurry down this path. I'm feeling vulnerable. I don't know if someone else is behind me. Keep hearing twigs cracking, and I don't know if it's the sound of the wood or there's someone else there. I need to find somewhere where it's busy and be back with others rather than being alone with my thoughts, which I find uncomfortable. Thanks, Carly. Yeah, that's definitely my breathing space too. But it's important to remember the picture hasn't shifted, picture hasn't changed, but we create our own perspective based on our past experience, our fears, our passions, our beliefs and values. And that's what we put onto situations or experiences. And this is the same for recruitment. So let's replace the wood with recruitment, which we're about to do in an activity together. And our perspective of recruitment could be very different to others. Like I spoke about at the beginning, it becomes our truth. How we see the wood is our truth. How we experience that is our truth. But sometimes it's helpful to see a different view so that we can shift that. Okay, so we're now going to do a short activity together to look at getting a new perspective on recruitment. Now, I thought about setting this activity up, and it made me think about my teacher training, when the only art sessions I had to train me how to teach art to children was basically I was left in a room with a group of students with me with a still life in the middle of the room. And when I think about truth, I think about that moment where we all chose a seat to look at the still life, which was, typically this whole kind of cascading bowl of fruit. And I chose my seat and I looked at the still life. And just like the wood, I saw my truth. I saw the shapes, patterns, the fruit, the angles from where I was sitting. And I would draw and think about the still life from that one position. However, if I had shifted into a seat somewhere else in the circle, my truth would have been different. And the question really is what am I missing? What am I missing by staying in that one seat? Looking at that bowl of fruit and maybe missing the tiny passion fruit that's hidden behind the huge watermelon that's in the center. And that's what we're going to look at today, is like, what might we be missing? And if at the very beginning you put down a 6 as your thoughts, like, this is my strength, this is my area, this activity can be really helpful to engage with how might other people see recruitment. We see it as something that comes to us naturally, maybe it's our strength. But when we're working with others, it's sometimes difficult to understand how they don't see it in the same way. So what I'm going to ask you to do is just relax. If you can, just to put your feet on the floor, just in a really good position, and close your eyes if you'd like to, if that helps you to engage. And we're going to imagine an empty room. Now, your room can be painted any colour, and I'd like you to look around the walls. They are empty, apart from having many doors. There are many doors leading into your room that you can come in and go out through. And I'd like you to notice the doors. Are they all the same? What are they made out of? And what kind of handles do they have? So notice the doors. And before we enter through one of the doors, inside the middle of the room, instead of a still life of cascading fruit, I ask you to place a potential new recruit in the middle of the room. Now, this might be your ideal kind of recruit if you know who that is. So it might be a mum with a buggy. It might be a teacher hoping to leave the profession. It might be someone that's older that's looking for some extra money to support their family or grandchildren. If you don't know who your ideal recruit is, you just place a person who could be a recruit. That person, it's not really about that actual person. What it is that they sum up recruitment. So just like you have a bowl of fruit, you're going to place a person in the middle of that empty room in your mind. And then you're going to find a door to enter the room. So walk in through the door, and I'd like you to look at the still life, that potential recruit in the middle of the room, and notice what you notice. What's your truth from this angle? What do you see? What are your thoughts? And then I'd like you to leave the room through the door you came through. And you're going to enter the room again, but using a different door this time. And what do you notice this time? What were you missing before? What's the equivalent of that passion fruit that was hidden from view? And again, you're going to leave through the door you came through and find a third door. This time, you're not entering alone. I ask you this time to enter the room with your mentor or somebody that inspires you or that you have a great connection with at Usborne. So it could be even someone like Lucy or Sue or anyone that you work with. And you're going to walk into the room side by side with them. What do you notice now that they are with you? And then you're going to leave the room with your mentor and let them leave you. And you're going to find a final door. Final door you enter the room with. You're entering as yourself, but not yourself of today. Entering as yourself as a new recruit. So that might have been last week, or it could be 20 years ago. So picture yourself as that new recruit. And I'd like you to walk into the room. And again, look at that still life of recruitment. And what do you notice this time? Okay, if you've got any thoughts, as you come back into our room together and you leave the empty room behind, just take with you, and obviously feel free, drop them in the chat. Any thoughts, any learnings, what was missing from view, what alternative perspective could you have on recruitment? So we've been holding this new recruit in the center of the room. We've been looking at them from different angles to try and shift our perspective around recruitment. What we're now going to do is start to understand the new recruit's mindset to help us move to connecting with those new recruits. Thank you, Nikki. Confidence about recruiting has grown. I love that. It's good to stop and look again. What don't I know about them? I mean, that, Laura, that's like a little sort of segue straight into where we're going next. Thanks. Confidence. Amazing. So let's start to think about the new recruit's mindset. And it was a lovely segue. It's as if you kind of teed it up perfectly. Oh, interesting. Slightly complacent. This is a really great different perspective. So exactly what we were just saying in the chat, what might be going on in their life that makes this opportunity appealing? So what I'd like you to really think about is this isn't necessarily about you. If recruitment isn't always working for you, or you get on that roller coaster where you have a peak and then it dips off, this is not about your skills or worth. What it's about is what's going on for the new recruit potentially. I mean, obviously we have to be reflective and think, are we doing enough? But what's going on for the new recruit? So I'd like you to think, what might be going on in their life that makes this opportunity appealing? What is great about this opportunity for them at this moment? What might they be looking for? And then the flip side, what fears or hesitations might they have? And we're going to start looking at how we can use our strategy to talk to some of these. And Christina, that's a great point. Interesting to think about how I look to potential recruits as well. What are they seeing of me? And what are we giving them? Do we understand exactly what they need? So this is moving straight into our 3 buckets of beliefs. So the training I've done around beliefs, that's often limiting beliefs as well as positive beliefs. There are generally 3 buckets that our beliefs can drop into, and they are pretty much what they say on the tin. So a belief about possibility. So what is possible? Ability, so what we're capable of, and worth. Are we worthy? So let's think in terms of Osborne quickly. So possibility, for example, you know, a new possible recruit might be looking at your ads. They might be looking at your, you doing this amazing pop-up bookshop at a, baby sensory, for example, but thinking, I doubt that's possible if you've got tiny kids. Like I've got a 2 and a 4-year-old. There's no way you could run that kind of business with tiny children. Or they might be thinking, I've never run a business before. I don't think I've got the skills of actually running a business. Like that's way out of my skill set. Or worth. People like me just don't do something like that. It's just not possible for someone like me from where I've come from. And what we want to think about is how full are these buckets? So have a think, and if you want, again, pop it in the chat. Which of these buckets needs to be full, or the fullest, to enable someone who really deep down wants to take the opportunity? Which bucket needs to be fuller to tip the balance, to be able to give them enough to say, yes, I will go for this? Okay, so we've got worth, possibility, worth, possibility. It's an interesting thing to consider. Are all three just as important as each other? We've got a lot of worth popping up, and that's really interesting. And how do we know? How do we know with that person standing there in that moment that we're trying to engage with? Do they feel worthy? Do they understand that the possibility exists? Yeah, that's interesting. I think you can influence the other two more than worth. Yeah, I totally, like, it's much easier to talk to possibility and ability than it is potentially to worth. Yeah, and Lindsay, great shout. Ability can be learned. No need to have it at the start. Do they know that? And this is where we're heading to. This next part is all about your recruitment strategies. So we've got the three buckets there that we've been discussing. And how can you fill those buckets for them without having to say it all in, like, you know, a spiel? So, you know, if we think about, and I haven't put all of the strategies up there, but some main ones. So social media, meeting people face to face, chatting to others. So that might be like at the school gate or at dinner when someone's like, oh, what do you do? The QR code. So what I'd like you to do is take a moment to reflect. How do you use your recruitment strategies now to fill those buckets? So for example, on Facebook, do you talk about the possibilities that are available? Are you putting that out there? And I've heard at all the leadership academies, you know, you've got to tell people what you do for them to know it exists. Are you sharing the possibility? Are you explaining, when you share the possibility, that actually, as we just said, you might not need a whole lot of skills and ability because that can be learned? Are you considering that if you have an ad or the QR code or something, you know, something that someone might fill in to register an interest in joining your team, what do they need around that to be able to engage? So for example, if I was at a book fair at a school and I saw an opportunity to sign up to a team or get more information, you know, that's probably the thing, come and get more information. You know, those, in that split second of me deciding, do I go for that and ask for more information, or do I hang back and leave it today? The thoughts that are in my head are, you know, what if I'm not the kind of person they're looking for? You know, I've got a buggy with a small child. Are they going to look at me and think, are you crazy? You can't do a business with a small child at home. No. What if I'm not the kind of person they're looking for their team? If I don't have the skill set that's required? So it's just reflecting on, what are you doing already? What could you do to enhance your recruitment strategies? What could you add to some of your strategies to start to fill up these three buckets? And I invite you to start thinking, okay, I'm quite strong at filling the possibility bucket. How often do I feel the worth, and how do I feel that? So just take a couple of minutes and just think, what could I do to fill those buckets more when I think about my recruitment strategies as they stand today? That was a great question. Did anyone just write down, make a strategy? I mean, that's a great starting point. No, the scattergun. I mean, it's classic. And all of us who own businesses you know, when we really unpick things, that scattergun approach of like, you know, shooting off things in different directions and you hope something lands well. This gives you a way to be intentional. Praise builds worth. Oh, I love that. I'm wondering, Gaynor, how you can use that within your, like, how do you engage praise in the strategies? Or, well, I mean, say strategies. Strategy sounds quite highfalutin, doesn't it? What I'm really talking about is the things you do to try and build your teams or find a new person to join you. I'm just going to give you a few seconds longer. So we've been thinking about, you know, the buckets we can fill for others. But the other thing, and this is an important part of the session, is where do your strengths lie? Where are your passions? What brings you energy about your Usborne business or life? You know, if you're new to Usborne, you know, life or your previous work. Because what we need to do is draw upon strengths and passions to bring a new lens to recruitment. So if I share a little bit of my story, sales is not my thing. My background's education, as I said at the beginning, and I've never had to sell myself. I've always sold my school or the nursery that I owned, which was super comfortable because I had an amazing team around me at both places. Now it's just me and my business. And that became quite uncomfortable at the beginning of my journey and my business. But my passion and strength is coaching. And what I've done is try to use my coaching as a lens for sales. So instead of just trying to sell myself to people, I try and engage and find connections, work out through coaching what's needed, and then align my services to the gaps that exist for that company or that person. And that for me makes sales work for me because I feel more comfortable. And actually, I'm drawing on something I love and I'm strong at, rather than just trying to sell. So what I'm asking you now is, what things within Usborne or your previous work are your strengths and passions? And how can you use these as a lens or a vehicle to see recruitment either in a different way or as an actual vehicle like I've done to push your recruiting forwards? So let's see, for example, if it's making a difference to others that you love, how can we use that as a lens for recruiting? How can we see recruiting as actually an opportunity to make a difference to others? We're passionate about sales and getting those books, the incredible Usborne books, into children's hands. How can we see recruiting and building a team as getting more books into more children's hands? And I'd ask you to find maybe 2 or 3 strengths, and not just the ones that I've put up today, 2 or 3 strengths, and just start to consider, how can I see recruitment through these lenses? Or how can I draw upon these? How can I use these strengths or passions to build how I recruit others? So if I'm great at mentoring and interacting with others, how do I draw upon that as my recruitment strategy? How am I using interactions to welcome others, you know, to talk about the possibilities, worth, you know, ability buckets? These are great ideas. You know, and it's great to know, like, once you get the conversations, you're really persuasive, and that's, you know, it's brilliant. It's just getting them, and that's the little piece of the puzzle, isn't it? How do you use those strengths to find those conversations, and relating your own experiences to a new recruit, for example. And I'm an ex-teacher, so looking in that direction. Yeah, but it's that using that story, isn't it? You know, what's your background? And that is the piece around what's possible. This is my story, and look at me now. This is what's possible for you too. So I know it's kind of a bit of a whistle stop tour, but obviously something you can return to. And I would invite you to really think about those strengths and passions. You know, I love that, Diana. I love helping others. I need to remember that and actually help them. Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? By remembering, you know, by putting that out there, it's the opportunity that you're giving to help others. And whether that's, you know, help them earn extra money, shift their lifestyle, bring them what they need in their life, align to their values, whatever that might be. So we go back to the beginning of where we began. And I remind you about the power of your thoughts. And I'm going to just throw some questions out just for you to think about as we wrap the session up tonight. What would have happened if someone hadn't recruited you? What thoughts will help you to reframe recruitment based on your strengths and what you love about your business? How do you get recruitment to work for you? What do you need from the process? How do you get this? And I think a really important question for someone that's outside of Usborne who has started their own business. What are you offering at a bargain price? I can't get over, whenever I speak to anyone in Usborne, I can't get over what the cost is. I've paid thousands to join a mentorship group, for example, for my business. That's part of the deal. You are never alone. You know, it's the first time in my life I've owned a business on my own. I've owned a business before, but with someone else. You know, it's the loneliest place to be. I've paid to be part of a community because I need connection. And that's one of my core values, as some of you know. But what are you offering at a bargain price? As well as getting stock, let's be honest. So I ask you, as you start to think about the end of this session, what would a more helpful thought be? And once you've got that more helpful thought, I ask you to think, what feelings would that thought bring? Would they be different feelings than those ones you first found on the feelings wheel? Like, I love this. I need to believe in myself. You know, if that's the thought, and I'm going to make it a little bit more hard-hitting, I believe in myself. What feelings does that bring up? And then what impact would that have on our behavior? Because it goes back to that cycle. If we can shift our thoughts, reframe our thoughts, it evokes different feelings and therefore produces different behaviors. It all starts with the thoughts. And someone shared with me this great sort of, I'm a real visual learner, and she shared with me about if you're struggling with a lot of negative thoughts that are dominating and therefore evoking difficult feelings and impacting your behavior in not a great way around recruiting. She talked about, I live in Essex, so I'm near London. She talked about that we've got a circle line. Don't know if you've got, in other places in the country, metro or trams and things. We've got the underground and it just goes round in a circle. And she said, imagine you get onto the train in the underground with all your thoughts. And then you choose, when you get to the platform, which thoughts you get off the train with and which thoughts you leave on that train going round. Those thoughts are still there. They're just circling. Intentionally choose which thoughts you get off the train with and take onto the platform. Because choosing our thoughts, they're powerful things. And I think, as a wrap up, it's really key to remember adaptability is the key. We've spent the whole session tonight looking at our lens on recruit. But we need to remember recruitment isn't static. Nothing is. The world is ever changing. We are ever changing. Social media is shifting. You look at what social media was like 5 years ago and where we are now. We cannot do the same things over and over again and expect the same results. As Einstein said, insanity is doing the same thing over again and expecting different results. If we're rolling out the same thing we were 7 years ago, 3 years ago, even maybe last year, are those things still relevant? It's that stopping, looking back in on our processes, on our approach, and thinking, are they still fit for purpose? Are they valid for this moment in time? And that's where you're at an advantage if you're new to Osborne, because you're starting with a strategy that's relevant today. For example, you're talking about, say, I'm an ex-teacher and that's who I'm going to focus on. I'm an ex-teacher too, and I know many of you are. What's happening in the world of teaching at the moment that you need to be speaking to? Teaching is a different world than it was. What's happening for parents at the moment? What do you need to be speaking to? If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. So I invite you, as you kind of come out of the session, to be thinking, what needs to change? Like, where is the world now? Where are potential recruits this moment in time? And what do they need to fill those buckets? And I'm not going to ask you to do this, but this is something to take away, and an invitation from me is to think, what do you need in terms of your 3 buckets? Remember that possibility, ability, worth, to be able to move forward or shift or reframe your recruiting. What bucket is a little bit empty? Or maybe just not as full as the others? Which bucket is doing great, super full? And maybe, what are we missing? What's making holes in those buckets and draining something out of them? How do we plug those holes so that we can just continue to fill the buckets? Because if your buckets of possibility, how do we really believe recruiting lots and lots of people is possible? Like, if that belief isn't there about possibility, how do we fill that? Who can we ask? Who can we lean on? What can we do? Do we truly believe we have the ability? If not, if we need to fill that bucket a little bit more, and I'm not saying that it needs to go right to the top, if it's, say it's like a quarter full, how do we get to half? And what about your worth? What fills that bucket? I mean, someone said praise. What about the people in our teams? Those recruits that do join us and then don't recruit. What are their buckets like? How could you find out? And then work out maybe what you can do to help them fill theirs. So I said to Lucy, you know, we will hopefully get through within the hour, which we have. And firstly, a huge thank you for joining me tonight. It's been wonderful to be back with Usborne. And before we leave, I'd really love you to drop into the chat one thing, either one thing you're taking away, one new thought you might have, or something you've thought, actually, I'm going to do something a little bit differently. Just one thing. So I'd love to see, I'll give you a minute just to kind of type those. My strength's becoming a vehicle. Thanks, Lucy. And I love above, I need to remember the joy the space of UCP brings and that I can offer that to others. I love that 3 buckets are a new concept for me. So I'm going to be thinking about these in my recruitment conversations. Oh, Carly, I remember, you know, it's reminded me of the excitement that's hidden beneath all the noise. There's so much noise, isn't there? What are we assuming? I mean, that's the other part of it, isn't it? What are we assuming? What noise is around us? The noise of, are we assuming that people don't like Usborne? Do they see it as MLMs? I mean, is someone external? I mean, I've had a great little peek in, maybe more than others. It's an incredible opportunity. And what you get as someone joining a team is vast. What are we assuming that others are thinking? That we're going to be pushy or pressurized? You know, remember, we're just sharing the opportunities. Alison, buckets are really interesting. I can't wait to explore these more. I'm definitely thinking about buckets now. Believe in myself and just go for it. I'm going to think about my buckets and ask for support needed to fill them. And this will in turn help me help, you know, help me help others. And one thing is the thought of where I'd be if I'd never joined, and how I can use these thoughts to drive forwards. I need to realize my own strengths are going to work on this. Well, listen, thank you all so much. And my final thought, so it goes right back to where I started at the beginning, and I said, I'm stepping over the fear all the time with my business. I love this quote. And if you feel there is, you know, some fear hanging around there, courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the judgment that something else is more important than fear. I hope that's a good little sort of thing to end on. And, you know, thank you for some of your lovely messages as well. I've thoroughly enjoyed tonight, and I'm happy to hang around. I think Lucy may be kind of posting if there's any questions or any thoughts that you may have.
I was frantically trying to write down the quote, to be honest, Jenny, so I thought it was great.
Well, that's the other thing. I'm happy to send the slides. So if you want those and that helps you to kind of work through this or do the recording, then you've got the quote, Lucy, so you're fine. You don't need to frantically write it.
I mean, Jenny, I've got 3 words. And I think everyone's going to be hearing far too much about me talking about buckets after this session. So I'm glad it resonated with everyone else too. Does anyone have any burning questions that they want to ask Jenny, or even questions that aren't burning that you just want to ask while she's here? The chat's been amazing as well. So huge thank you to all of you for being so actively involved in the chat. And I think, yeah, it was so interesting. Even looking at some of these comments, Emily wrote a really good one about, I need to remember that it's about the recruits, not me. And I think you don't know which bucket someone needs filling more than others, and you can't assume that their bucket, the word bucket's probably going to haunt me now, Jenny, but their bucket is the same as yours, or their bucket is more full than yours. All I can see is Kerry's face now when I'm talking about buckets.
I'm wondering maybe we should reframe this as a balloon, you know, like what lifts your balloon, what lowers it. It might be a little bit nicer than buckets. I don't get your thoughts. I think also it's that piece around sometimes, I love that. It's not about us. You know, we make assumptions that someone has like dropped off the face of the earth, or they've not done, you know, we start with someone and we're like, oh, they're going to be amazing. They're going to absolutely rock it. and then they end up doing nothing. And you think, what? You know, that was not what I was thinking was going to happen. But actually, that's not about you. Like, what was missing for them? Like, maybe they just didn't believe, like, well, they didn't think they had the ability. And it's just, you know, think again, that thoughts, feelings, behavior. The behavior is I retreat, I withdraw, I'm a bit too scared, I don't know what to do. Yeah, it can be about them. And I think that helps also separate what's you, what's them, rather than holding on to that ourselves.
I think, yeah, people are just putting loads of really great things in the chat. I think it was interesting as well, your perspective of like, what is someone seeing when they are seeing your sign? And it's, yeah, it's that split second, isn't it? And I think that's all you've got, particularly if you've got small children or you're trying to pay for a book at a book fair. And again, it's not necessarily that person's not interested. It, you know, it could be the belief that they think you're not going to be interested in them.
And it's a big deal, isn't it? You know, I was thinking, you know, I was saying to Lucy, I'd, you know, great book fair at my son's school, and I always try and go. And, you know, that thought for a minute, it's really putting yourself out there, isn't it? To be going from behind, you know, you're buying a book to all of a sudden putting yourself forward for an opportunity that you don't know whether you're right for. You think it might be right for you. Are you right for it? Are you what that person's looking for? It's putting yourself out, you know, out there, and all of us can find that challenging. So it's like, how do we help that process and soften the edges of the nervousness that people might have? You know, what information or what can we provide helps maybe just push them a little bit over the line.
I feel like everyone is now kind of in a state of like quandary and obviously needs time to kind of reflect and unpack and think about what's really resonated with them in this session. Jenny, are you on any form of social media should anyone want to reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I'm on LinkedIn. Like that's where I kind of grow my business. So I know that's not everyone's platform, but I think on the last slide, there might have been an email address. So I'm really happy for anyone to drop me an email. Like I love, like my top thing's connection. So I love connecting with people. So yeah, really happy for anyone to drop me a line. But yeah, you'll find me sometimes, if I'm brave enough, hanging out on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much, Jenny, and a massive thank you to all of you who have come along.